What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel and welcome to our first video. Today we'll be talking to you all a little bit about who we are and what we do, but mainly just going through the applications that we offer and why we think they're going to be of use to you all. So Migration Station is a waterfowl migration tracking company. We offer applications that are meant to make the tracking of ducks and geese in their fall and winter flights extremely quick, extremely simple, and very intuitive. Our waterfowl migration database consists of real data, not comments, not opinions, real data. It's updated daily, and our applications are 100% interactive, which means if you want to select a specific date, a specific species, you can do that. You can interact with our applications. But best of all, everything on our site is 100% free. So there is no cost to you all whatsoever, ever, period, end of discussion. The reason that we're able to make this site free is through the support of our trusted partners. So please take the time, look up each and every one of these companies here. I promise you they're some of the best in the business, and we're so extremely thankful for their support. And through their support, we're able to offer all of these applications to you all. So huge thanks, huge shout out to them. So a little bit about Migration Station by the numbers. In our migration database, we have over 20 years worth of data. We've surveyed over 330 locations on an annual basis. So that's not just 330 locations, period, over 20 years. That's on an annual basis. We get information from over 330 locations. We have a total of over 12,000 reports analyzed in our migration database, which has led to a cumulative total of over 340 million waterfowl counted. That's obviously not just one season. That's over a very long length of time. But we have information on migration movements of over 340 million waterfowl. That's extremely impressive. The applications that we offer on this site are our waterfowl migration map, our waterfowl counts table, our historic midwinter waterfowl survey, and our historic waterfowl populations application. Each one of these is unique in its own right. They convey different types of information. These top two are more migration related to the current season, and these bottom two are more historic for just waterfowl populations over time. But each one of these conveys a very important bit of information that we think is going to be very useful to waterfowl hunters and outdoor enthusiasts. So please take a moment, check them all out. But we're actually going to dive into each and every one of these here in a second. So without any further ado, let's check out the waterfowl migration map. So here's the web page for the waterfowl migration map. We have an about section down here, and we also have a little section that goes into detail about why a specific area might not have any data. So if you're curious, give that a look. But if you're thinking to yourself, wow, there's not a whole lot of information yet, that's because there's not. As I'm recording this, we're at the very, very beginning of the 2022-2023 waterfowl season. A lot of the southern states, duck season's still a month plus away. We just don't have a lot of information to convey yet. So for the purposes of this video, I'm actually going to switch over to last season's data. This is data from the 2021-2022 waterfowl season. I've mentioned to you that our applications are 100% interactive, and I think it's really cool, so I want to show you what I'm talking about. So if you want to look at information from a specific date, you just take this little date slider and you move it, and you can see the information is changing. If you want to look at a different species, we were just looking at total ducks. Just come over here and you just select whatever species. So the map has changed for mallards and the map has changed for Canada geese. Let's go back to total ducks here. And I think the coolest part of this application is if you actually pick a dot and you hover on it, it'll show you the count for that area for the most recent report. In this case, I actually selected December 9th and the report was on December 9th. You're not always that lucky, but in this case, that particular area had that many ducks. And you can kind of go over each and every one of these data points and just kind of get an idea of how many ducks are in each place. The blue, dark blue colors denote low counts. The greens and yellows are kind of medium counts. And the reds and oranges denote really high counts and concentrations of ducks. If there's not an actual numeric count, some areas will actually have what I call qualitative counts, meaning there won't be a number associated with it, but it will be high or low or moderate. In this case, Panola County had a moderate duck count at this point in time. Now, dots that are red indicate areas where we don't have current enough information to convey to you all. So there's not information for these areas that is current enough in our database to convey it. Usually there is information, and so that's why it's denoted with a red dot. It's our way of saying, hey, we don't currently have information for this area, but normally we will eventually, or we do at some point. So, keep an eye on this particular spot. The most basic and most helpful use case for this particular application is just being able to see the migration over time. So I'm just going to select a random date here, and I'm just going to click forward. And as I click forward, you can see the ducks start moving south. You start to see the red high concentrations of waterfowl making their way further south. So like right there, for example, we go from a high concentration of waterfowl in this particular area here. Just make a couple clicks forward and you start to see that shift towards the Arkansas and Mississippi area. So that's really cool. So yeah, that's how this application works. I think it's really interesting. I think it conveys a lot of information in a very compact form, and I hope you guys find a lot of use for it too. But we'll go ahead and move on to the waterfowl counts application. And here is the webpage for our waterfowl counts application. If the migration map shows a lot of information for a lot of different areas, the waterfowl counts application shows a lot of information but zooms in on one specific area. How you use this application is you just type in an area you want to see data for right here. A forecast, 5-day forecast will pop up for that area, and so too will the waterfowl counts. So let's type in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, and that's the headquarters of Pitt Properties, one of Migration Station's partners. Top-notch guide service. Please give them a look. And the first thing you'll notice is that a 5-day forecast has popped up for Fergus Falls, as well as the waterfowl counts. So as you can see, there's a few numeric counts, a lot of qualitative counts, a lot of high counts. But for the areas where there is a numeric count, in some cases we have information about the species breakdown for those numeric counts. So what species comprise those counts? If you want to look at information on geese as opposed to ducks, you just select geese right here, and the goose data will be populated. If we have information on Canada's snows and specks, that information will go right here. So yeah, pretty simple. That's how you use the waterfowl counts application. We think it's really helpful to try to just get an understanding for what's going on in your area. But yeah, so let's go ahead and move on to some historic data, and let's look at waterfowl populations over time. And here is the information on waterfowl populations over time. This data is derived from the surveys that are conducted by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services to get information on the breeding populations and midwinter populations of waterfowl. Those surveys are conducted in the summer and the winter months. So here we're looking at the breeding populations of mallards. If you interact with the data, you can see the specific counts and years for the species you've selected. If you select a different species, obviously a different line representing that species will be populated. And yeah, you just kind of explore the data that way. If we look at midwinter populations, it's very similar, but you actually select a species and a state. So you can actually kind of zoom into the state level for these midwinter populations. So we're going to select Missouri. And again, you can just kind of go through the information. You can see the year and the count of the species you've selected for that year. If you wanted to look at more than just one species at a time, we'll just select puddle ducks for this example. You can, so you can kind of see how in Missouri, the majority of the waterfowl that were present for the longest time were just mallards, but in recent years, you've started to see more teal, more gadwall, more pintail show up. If you wanted to get an idea of what all the species did in Missouri, besides mallards, because mallards are kind of drowning out the data here, you just click mallards one time and it'll hide it. So you can see all the species aside from mallards. So yeah, you can see without a doubt in recent years there has been a large increase in the other puddle duck species in Missouri. Just click on mallards to bring them back. Now if you wanted to zoom in on northern pintail, for example, well, you just double click on northern pintail and you can see their populations in Missouri over time for recent years. And again, just double click to bring all the data back. So yeah, that's the use case for the waterfowl populations over time application with the data derived from the surveys conducted by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. So we'll check out our last application, the midwinter waterfowl survey map. And last but not least, here is our midwinter survey map. So again, this data is derived from information gathered by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services when they've flown their midwinter waterfowl surveys. It's not just the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, it's a bunch of the local and state agencies in coordination and in partnership with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, but the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services kind of headed it on. Anyways, this one is going to look very familiar to the migration map. Same general premise. You interact with the data just by hovering over areas. You can kind of get a general sense for the relative counts for those areas, whether it's high or low. You select your species over here. We'll select mallards, and you just change the date. So you can just kind of go back in time and see how the populations have changed over time. This one's really simple. We'll spend just a short amount of time here, but yeah, this is a map version of the midwinter waterfowl survey data that we talked about a little bit on the last application. So yeah, there you go. Well, guys, that's it. We've walked you through all the applications that we have to offer. I hope you found this video useful, and I hope you find those applications useful. Please check in regularly throughout the season. We update our information daily, so there's always fresh information coming in. Please give us a follow on our other socials. We're on Instagram. It just helps us to really get the word out as best as we can and just help people make the most of their precious time afield. If you've made it this far in the video, I'm sincerely appreciative of your time. Please give this video a like and subscribe. We'll be posting videos regularly throughout the season, trying to keep the information flowing of how the movements of ducks and geese are progressing. Thank you all so much for your time, and please remember, follow the migration with Migration Station.